Hey there, folks. Welcome to Head, Heart, and Hustle, the podcast for creatives. As always, I'm your host, Alan Plummer. Thank you for listening. Now, today I'm going to talk about LinkedIn. As a lot of you know, I've spent several years building out a social media team and leading a social media team. So I want to kind of take a bit of a detour today and kind of talk about LinkedIn and social networking in general and what that means for you as a creative individual. Now, I know a lot of people have already written about LinkedIn and social media, and it ends up being this contentious thing about how to use social media and is it the end of civilization and what is, are we kind of going to hell in a handbasket, quite honestly. And normally I would shy away from ranting about these types of things, especially when they've been discussed to death like LinkedIn and social media has. In this instance, though, I feel the need to kind of make an exception and share with you guys my thoughts on things like LinkedIn, networking through that platform, inviting people to be connections and such. And as someone who led the development of a social media presence for a division of my employer, I've crafted best practices around LinkedIn profiles for my company. I've trained executives and leaders on how to best use the platform. I've introduced advertising to the platform for our division. And I've even spoken about LinkedIn and social media platforms at conferences, including places like socialmedia.org, the Social Shakeup that happens every spring in Atlanta, and events for other companies kind of around the country. So that said, here's my take. At its essence, every LinkedIn user uses the platform in one of two ways. It's either quantity or quality. Using a platform like LinkedIn with an eye to quantity usually translates into having as large a network as possible. Now, these are the folks that you see on LinkedIn who identify themselves with the acronym LION, L-I-O-N. It stands for LinkedIn Open Networker. Now, what it means is that these people are willing to connect with anyone and everyone, even if they don't know them. And it may not surprise you to learn that many individuals using this approach are involved in recruiting, human resources, or sales. After all, sales and recruiting is a numbers game, right? The wider you cast your net, the more people you can filter through to find a qualified lead and meet your sales or recruiting goals. Using a platform like LinkedIn with an eye to quality, on the other hand, means limiting your connections just to people you know and have a personal connection with. These are the types of folks who hate seeing something in their feed and thinking, who the hell is that? These folks are also more apt to be senior leaders at company or farther along in their careers and be tenured professionals or creatives who pretty honestly have to fiercely guard their time and availability. That's because there's this inverse relationship between career success and the number of people reaching out to you unsolicited. When you're young and you're starting out in your career, no one returns your calls. We all know that. But as you get through your career and have tons of experience and get into some kind of senior roles, it feels like every sales executive, job candidate, or MBA student wants to meet you for coffee. And I can tell you from experience, it gets overwhelming really quickly. Now, if you've been in the social media game for a while, like I have, I'll admit it, then you remember when social platforms were new and growing. Back then, the name of the game was what we called reach. In other words, how many people could potentially see your post and interact with it. The more people you could reach, the better the post would do. Personally or professionally, the best way to make your name on social media used to mean having a huge audience. Today, though, that's no longer the case. As more and more companies are using social media as an advertising channel, platforms like LinkedIn and Facebook and others continue to kind of revise and tweak the algorithms on those feeds to provide this optimal balance of sponsored content that helps them generate revenue through advertising, along with posts from people that you actually know and care about. And it's a tricky balance. It's an important thing for social media platforms to get right. Even just a few weeks ago, we all heard about Facebook's changes to its news feed once again and what that meant for companies and is Facebook going downhill, all this swirl around that. I'm sure we'll continue to hear similar stories throughout the rest of this year. And those algorithm changes impact what you see in your feed every time you go to a LinkedIn or you go to an Instagram or you go to a Facebook. Those changes, combined with this ever-growing network of people that we all seem to have built on these different platforms, means that a lot of the stuff I see in my LinkedIn feed or my Facebook feed or my Instagram feed end up being posts that I don't care about. Or worse yet, they're posts from people that I don't even remember or know. So I've changed my approach, and I have started making similar recommendations to colleagues, friends, and leaders at work when I'm asked, and I'm going to make the same recommendation to you. In short, I'm scaling back. Instead of looking at social media as quantity, I'm now more focused on quality. And in order to do that, I've started really scrutinizing my connections on these platforms. If you and I met once several years ago, and we haven't really spoken since we met, then all right, I don't necessarily consider you a connection any longer. If I accepted your LinkedIn invite years ago because you reached out to me and introduced yourself, but then I never heard from you again, I don't think of you as a connection. My mindset is that if I would have to reintroduce myself when I reached out to you, then we don't really know each other, do we? Is that harsh? Maybe. Is it necessary? Absolutely. It also means that generic connection invitations from people I don't know immediately get ignored. If you can't be bothered to write a sentence or two saying why you want to connect with me, why would I accept the invitation? I would hope that you would think the same way. And in fact, the last time I checked, none of us have developed the ability to read minds. So sending a generic connection invitation to somebody without any explanation of why makes no sense, unless you and the person know each other so well that it's obvious once they receive your name across some kind of social media platform. Look, I get it. Some of you aren't going to agree with me, and you shouldn't have to. Depending on your profession and your career, you may need to take a more quantitative approach to social media, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm not a trading card either. And profiles on social media, be it LinkedIn or Facebook or any other platform, are not things to simply collect and hoard because you can. Your network is not a collection of baseball cards, and you sure as hell shouldn't treat it like such. People who think that way, to be honest, are part of the reason social media gets a bad rap. We're losing sight of the benefits of these systems and platforms because we continue to gamify them instead of treating them as a digital version of who we are in real life. And don't even get me started on this idea of the perfect person so many of us see on Facebook, Instagram, and these other platforms. I can't stand it when people feel compelled to show their life as perfect and wonderful in every image or every post. The humble brags, the perfectly timed photos, the competition, all of that is just ridiculous, and there's no need for it. So what now? Well, my advice to you is this. If you have a valid reason to connect with someone through social media, especially through LinkedIn, then do it. But take the time to introduce yourself and explain why you're reaching out. If you're in sales and you think the other individual might be interested in your product, for example, then be upfront and say that. If you're an MBA student trying to find an internship and the individual you're contacting is an alumnus, then say that. Just don't make people guess. Just because someone scrutinizes their connections like I do, doesn't mean that we won't connect with new people. It just means that the bar is higher when you make a first impression. So up your game a little bit when you're building out these professional networks, and you'll be glad you did. Thanks for listening. Now go create something.